Ask George is brought to you in association with International Cricket Tours. Now, ICT are dedicated specialists in taking supporters all over the world. And get in touch with their dedicated team and they can take you to the Caribbean, Pakistan, the Women's Ashes, New Zealand. Love cricket, love travel, choose International Cricket Tours.
Hello, we're here at Lord's. We've just watched day 2 of the first test between England and West Indies. It's Ask George with Santokie from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and George Dobell, of course, the cricket correspondent of the Cricketer magazine. I'm Huw Turbervill, editor of the Cricketer, and here are the questions. So firstly, we've got a question from Ash, who asks, where next for West Indies cricket?
Well, how long have you got? Well, first thing we'd like to say on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, West Indies are back. It's a day 3. We managed to bow out today, which is one positive. But where do we go next, long term? I think if you're looking at the West Indies teams, there are a lot of systematic and organisational issues. I mean, the fact we've got an inexperienced batting lineup, we've lost a lot of players to T20 cricket, unfortunately, who would otherwise be playing red ball and test cricket. And the fact, if you look at, we only had one warm-up game, a 3-day game in Beckenham. I think if you ask any touring side to come to England, play a 3-day warm-up game and then jump into Lord's, it's always going to be tough. So I think we've seen a combination of factors result in what's happened so far at Lord's.
Just to put some perspective, West Indies won their last test, England lost their last 4. West Indies won the last series they played against England. I've seen England have quite a lot of bad days. That's just perspective. I'm no way suggesting that everything's all right in Caribbean cricket. It clearly isn't, and I've seen a lot of the proposed quick solutions that people have put on Twitter, for example, today. You know, Nicholas Pooran, Shea Hope, these guys. I think Hope averages 25 in Test cricket, right? I don't think Pooran's ever hit a first-class 100. There aren't quick fixes. What there could be, if world cricket actually wanted to do it, is a redistribution of the wealth. That would make a very big difference. It's not all about money, but it is partly about money. If we let Caribbean cricket wither on our watch, it's against all of us. And it's happening. And this is what the MCC should have been talking about last week. The solution is not to cut the number of test teams. It's not. That would be a tragedy, in my view. We wouldn't have had the best day of the test year, may have been in Brisbane, yeah? We wouldn't have had days like that. So I'm afraid we need leaders with a bit more vision, a bit more bravery, a bit more determination to fight for Test cricket, because this is on all of us. Yeah, I think so.
Has there been a more abysmal warm-up match than the one at Beckenham? County performance, county select 11, rookies, you know. I mean, to be fair, the guy got 100. He's only played 3 first-class matches, but anyway, it's
the way of the one world, though. I mean,
terrible preparation.
But it's not going to change. The schedule is absolutely packed. Yeah. You know, I think I said this yesterday. I've only been back in England 3 days. They don't have time. It's not easy to just say play more. You will just lose more players. There has to be a distribution of wealth. We know the solutions up to a point. There just has to be a will to do it. If people really care about Test cricket, this stuff can happen.
Just a quickie as well. Ben Stokes and Pat Cummins apparently were big up on Test cricket in the MCC event last Friday. We didn't really get the vibe coming out of it, but apparently they spoke really well. So in the next magazine, we've got a bit of them.
Good to hear.
Yeah. Right. Next question. Matthew Wright asks, did Jamie Smith's innings perfectly explain why Ben Foakes was dropped?
Well, partly. Part of the role of Jamie Smith is to bat with the tail. And he did show briefly, really. I mean, I think he added 29 with the tail, to be fair. But 9, 10, 11 didn't score any runs. You know, they got 0 each. And he was able to show that he had a change of gear. And that is part of what they picked him for. It's only part of the job of a wicketkeeper batter. He also has to keep well. But he has done, to be fair, so far. I say this as someone who would have stuck with Ben Foakes. But I think so far he's vindicated the selection, but it's early days. I mean, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, Jamie Smith looks talented. As you said, his job is to bat with the tail end, but I think he showed great composure at the beginning, showed a lot of patience. He's obviously been picked for his attacking prowess, but he showed a lot of patience, and then he let loose later on, and we saw a range of shots, which shows a lot of potential and promise going forward.
I guess he is exactly the sort of, I mean, Pooran's probably 30, 29.
29, yeah.
Right. He is exactly the sort of player who England are able to keep in their system.
Yeah.
which West Indies are struggling to do. I mean, obviously Paran's playing T20 and playing it brilliantly, but you know, I don't think we're never gonna know how good he could have been. In the same way, we'll never know how good Kieran Pollard could have been. I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, great comparison, yeah.
Okay, Bobby Smith asks, was the 52-run partnership between Chris Woakes and Jamie Smith the perfect example of why Woakes is still needed in this team?
Kinda. I think that's quite generous on Chris Woakes, to be fair. Look, he hasn't had a very good game. You're absolutely right that without someone like Chris Woakes, the batting falls off a cliff at 8, and that is part of the reason he's here. But I think had Bryden Cast been available, or maybe even Jamie Overton, they would have been here instead. So I think the same thing. Chris Woakes is fulfilling a transitional role for England. He's a fantastic cricketer, but he is at the end of his career, you know, at the tail end of his international career probably. I hope they stick with him because he's obviously not had the best of games. He will add experience, wisdom, great guy, runs down the order, but whether you need him this summer actually, don't know. I mean, they probably had enough runs anyway, but I take the point, you know, he's in the side as an all-rounder, not just as a fine bowler.
Chris Woakes?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done much with the ball. He's picked for home test as a specialist. He hasn't done much with the ball, but as George said, transitional period, he's someone you'd imagine is going to take over to the next generation. So I'd expect to see him going forward at least for the next few tests.
Okay, Ben Rigby asks, England talk about planning for the Ashes. Do they talk about getting big scores and batting time, which is generally key on Australian pitches?
I don't think they're talking about batting time, do you? I mean, I don't think there's a lot of evidence of them talking about batting time. I think they talk about getting lots of runs, but I think they'd like to do it quite quickly. Yeah, I mean, the game's changed. The game is always changing, and they're trying to do something that we haven't really seen before. And, you know, I'm not the most enthusiastic proponent of it, but they've had a good couple of days, haven't they? Don't know, what do you think? I mean, you will have watched on as England have talked about, at times, they've talked about saving Test cricket. I mean, the thing is that people do latch on to the more extreme things they've said. A lot of what they've said has been quite reasonable and sensible, but some of it hasn't. How has it felt watching on?
Yeah, I think as you said, there's been a lot of clickbait headlines. So the talk, you know, Ben Stokes saying fans it should be a pleasure that they've been able to see this team whilst at the same time they're bottom of the World Test Championship. There does seem to be some sort of contradictions in that. But as you said, a lot of what they said has been reasonable. I do think the talk about the Ashes before a series against West Indies has come across as slightly disrespectful to West Indies in terms of, all right, we're just going to go through you guys. Our real test is going to be about Australia. And as you said, it sort of contradicts the message about saving World Test cricket, when you're placing a lot more emphasis on that Ashes as opposed to West Indies or Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's mean to come across disrespectful to West Indies. I think the fact is, though, that it is an opportunity to plan.
Yeah.
And they would be disingenuous if they didn't say it and if they didn't take the opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
And sadly, that you know I love Caribbean cricket. The fact is, they kind of have made the worst predictions come true in the last couple of days.
Yeah,
it's been painful to watch. It hasn't, you know, this batting lineup isn't up to it on current evidence, and I don't think anyone takes any pleasure in that, do they?
No, exactly. It's been sad to see. Like I said, the signs were sort of there when you factor in how we prepared for this tour and the players picked. But when you are seeing it in real time, it is very sad to see, you know, the shots being played, the lack of application, and just the sort of the abysmal decline throughout the 2 days of the side.
Yeah, and look, we don't want to be, I really don't want to be patronising or condescending about Caribbean cricket, and I hope that came across at the start. But equally, the job is to tell the truth, and we would be lying to you if we pretended that everything was all right in Caribbean cricket. It is not all right, and it will not be all right unless we change systems and structures. That we agree, don't we?
Yes, definitely.
So I just finished up revving up my motorbike now. So Jack Rule asks, isn't Jimmy finishing his batting career? Not out, no balls faced, with Jamie Smith simply poetic, the longest serving player with the newest handover of the eras.
I could only think of you on a motorbike all the while you were talking. It was, what's the word? It's not erotic. It's incongruous.
Yeah.
Are you a motorbike rider?
No way.
Have you ever ridden a motorbike?
I never have, no. My dad nearly lost his leg on one, so I never went on one.
That took a dark turn.
How's your driving these days, all right? Yeah?
I had little. I can't really say, can I? Because
No.
the people might be watching. I had a little bit of a car accident in Barbados.
Sorry, yeah. No one was hurt. Okay.
And it was partly because he was phoning me incessantly, asking me to do something. And I was a bit stressed and late for a plane. But absolutely no harm done.
Moving on.
A little bit to the
Jack
car,
Moore,
but I got away with it until you brought it up on a podcast.
Do you remember the question about Jimmy Anderson? Wasn't that simply pathetic? Not out, he didn't face a ball. And he was with Jamie Smith. Okay, I mean, it was amusing, wasn't it? He didn't face a ball, I suppose. Or a shame, or something. Was it? Have you got anything to say about
Was he meant to get a guard of honour when he came up to bat?
He was.
Was he meant?
They were so carried away with the wicket, they've just said.
I mean, it was
They
a good
meant to do a
wicket.
guard of honour, but I mean, they can. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, but I mean, I think he's played 188 tests. He's achieved quite a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to go away embittered.
No, I don't think it's going to be too distraught.
Should that
about
be the headline for this?
think
West
they'll go-
Indies snub Anderson.
Yeah, we can go with that.
Can you believe
Or
it?
Jamie
You heard it for the Caribbean
Jamie
podcast.
Smith denies Anderson dream batting finale.
So you've got to put Santokie's name next to this, yeah? Because I don't want to go there. Because some people only look at the headlines, yeah?
Yeah,
Trust
that's
me.
I mean, we've been pessimistic about West Indies cricket and their performance over the 2 days. What did you think of that celebration from Mikyle Louis, direct run out?
Lovely.
This is the last question, so we don't want to spoil it.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Innocent Bystander asks,
Hello, Benno.
who celebrated more, Mikyle Louis for his run out or Ollie Watkins for his 90-minute winner for England against the Dutch last night?
Well, I think there'd been a lot of talk before the series about Mikyle Louis being the first player from St Kitts to play Test cricket. George, I think you clarified, is actually Joey Benjamin.
He played for England, so he's the
Yeah.
first man to play for West Indies.
So I think Mikyle Louis is denied the acclaim of being the first St Kitts born player to play Test cricket. So that direct run out was a celebration of being the first player from St Kitts to have a direct run out.
Do you know what? He's going to play quite a lot of Test cricket, though. There are signs. That guy can play, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
And that's encouraging. But I think this is his 8th first-class game.
Yeah, correct.
You know, he's been thrown in the deep end, and that's the way things are now, and it's really, really difficult. But I hope they stick with him. There are other signs, aren't there? You know, Shamar Joseph hasn't had a great game. I don't think he looks fully fit.
No.
But there is some talent there. I don't think talent has ever been the problem with Caribbean cricket. But what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the sides that I grew up loving, Pakistan and West Indies, slip away. And that's bad news. This doesn't feel cyclical. And we have to do something about it. And that, I'm afraid, means telling the truth and saying that this isn't up to standard and suggesting solutions, because the people running world cricket, they're not looking out for these teams like they should. They're not. What's the evidence that they are? What's the evidence that they're doing anything? They just tut and mutter, they're not actually helping. So, you know, those of us who love these teams and love Test cricket, we're the ones who are going to have to come up with ideas.
We're trying to stay optimistic, but it looks like it's going to be...
No, but there's no point being happy
No,
idiot.
I mean, with Sri Lanka coming as well, it'll be interesting to see how they get on. It's, you know, it's going to be disappointing if West Indies and Sri Lanka don't lift their game.
Well, I think we're asking them to do incredible, impossible things. And this isn't meant to sound arrogant about English cricket, because, you know, England are bottom of the World Test Championship, and I'm very aware of this. But we're going to lose Test sides, and we're going to lose the, you know, full house here today. There's a full house tomorrow, and they're going to see about 50 minutes cricket. It isn't sustainable.
And it is a good point you said. They were discussing going down to about 6 or 7 teams, weren't they?
Yeah.
Ravi Shastri apparently was keen on that.
Yeah, and I say again, the best day of the cricket this year, arguably, was the Brisbane Test. There's loads of talent. It would be a catastrophic failure of leadership to lose these Test sides, and I don't have a whole lot of faith in the leadership of world cricket.
Well,
do you? I mean,
no, we need more cricketers in there and fewer businessmen and lawyers.
Yeah.
well, there's nothing against businessmen and lawyers. They're
There's a
great.
time and a place for
You know, a lot of the best people in history have been lawyers, haven't they? But I just want them to have a passion to save Test cricket, and I don't see it.
Good night.